My name is Amber Morgan, and today I am presenting to you my project entitled Wearing Many Hats, examining the protective role of working during the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic's impact on finances, academics, health, and socialization left many lives disrupted and created the perfect environment for mental health issues to evolve. College students were not spared and may have actually been at a higher risk of social isolation and loneliness due to social distancing measures. However, it is becoming increasingly apparent that not all individuals were psychologically affected to the same extent. For example, a systematic review by Hanneman and colleagues found that among healthcare workers, increased perceived social support and resiliency were associated with better mental health outcomes. Previous research on the effects of holding multiple life roles, such as being a working student, has found that having multiple compatible roles can have a positive or enhancing effect on psychological well-being due to the increased social and emotional support of the additional roles. Therefore, the current study examined the protective power of working students' multiple roles in an attempt to identify factors that may have lessened the psychosocial impact of the pandemic. Specifically, as you can see by the hypotheses in the conceptual model, it was expected that a greater COVID-19 impact would predict worse psychosocial outcomes. In other words, being heavily impacted by COVID-19 was expected to be associated with greater depressive symptoms, perceived stress, and loneliness. However, it's also expected that working more hours would weaken the relationship between COVID-19 impact and psychosocial outcomes. So for this study, participants completed several online surveys that measured depressive symptoms, perceived stress, loneliness, and the impact of COVID-19 on their lives in terms of how it impacted things such as income, employment, health, and socialization. Details of the measures you can see on the right column of this poster if you'd like any additional information. As expected, greater COVID-19 impact predicted more symptoms of depression, perceived stress, and loneliness. However, this relationship weakened as work hours increased until it reached a threshold number of work hours at which COVID-19 was no longer related to the psychological outcomes. For depression symptoms, this threshold was more than 29.25 hours. For perceived stress, it was 24.32 hours. And for loneliness, it was 20.71 hours. So given the recent life-altering changes that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was important to examine the psychosocial effects of the pandemic and identify factors that altered this relationship. The current findings add to the role enhancement literature by identifying working status in terms of hours worked per week as a mitigator to the psychosocial effects of COVID-19. This beneficial effect of having a dual role as a student and an employee may have been due to the additional social support provided by coworkers, or that working served as a distraction from thoughts about the pandemic. Additionally, those who did not work may have suffered more from social isolation due to the pandemic social distancing measures. Neither COVID-19 impact, work or hours, or their interaction predicted psychological outcomes over 20 hours per week. This indicates future research should investigate additional aspects of work, such as cognitive demands and interpersonal stressors, to explain the relationship between COVID-19 impact and psychosocial outcomes at a greater number of hours worked per week. Overall, this research is important because it indicates that working and possibly other social activities, such as extracurricular activities and volunteer work, should be encouraged due to the mental health benefits. Additionally, this research allows the identification of those who may be more at risk of negative psychosocial outcomes in response to stressors due to their uninvolvement in social activities.